I find it kind of sad that the first Ghibli film that I actually get to take a look at as a film critic is probably going to be the last film by Hayao Miyazaki. And I know he's announced his retirement and come out of retirement multiple times throughout his career, but given that he specifically mentioned that his eyesight is starting to fail with this particular announcement, it's probably safe to assume that he's probably not going to be making any more features in the near future. I mean, the guy is like 76 years old. He's getting old. So, yeah. How does Hayao Miyazaki's swan song hold up, and does the Disney dub do it any justice? Let's find out as we start this episode of Romney's Reviews. This film is definitely on the more artistic side of Studio Ghibli's repertoire, with a few choices that may make the film a little difficult to follow at the beginning. As such, it takes a while for the story to really get going. Another thing I must mention is that, again, these films being at a slower pace than most animated films we're used to here in the US, that's kind of normal, but this film is even a little bit slow by Ghibli standards. The animation is pretty well produced, but there are some moments where the simulated camera moves have kind of an artificial look to them. I mean, if you look at like old Saturday morning cartoons from like the 90s, you'll notice how they'll have like a artificial pan that doesn't actually look like the camera is actually moving, but just looks like you're sliding the picture. There are a few scenes like that in the film, and it's kind of hard to tell if that was part of the original film or if that was something Disney had to do in order to, like, it effectively looked like pan and scan. And it was kind of hard to tell if that was part of the original film or if that was Disney's call, and really it's kind of hard to tell. When it comes to the editing, there are some pretty harsh and quick cuts. It's not like psycho quick, but let's just say there aren't a lot of transitions between certain scenes, especially when it comes to transitioning between the real world and kind of this dream world that our main character kind of goes to and talks to his aeronautics idol, Caproni, and there's no real transition. That it kind of was a little confusing at first. Thankfully, they managed to ease things off as the film kind of carries on, but it was definitely kind of jarring because there's no real transition or real build-up to those particular scenes. In regards to the English dub itself, it's kind of hit or miss, really. I mean, I haven't actually seen the original Japanese version of The Wind Rises, but even I could tell that there was just some things going on with the way the film was dubbed. It's not so much a case of that the voice acting was bad, but let's just say there were quite a few scenes where the dialogue was very kind of quick, very rushed. It was like they were really trying to get it to sync up, but just couldn't quite get it right. Now, based on what limited knowledge I have of Japanese, while there are maybe certain phrases that are like a full sentence in English, with Japanese, some phrases can pretty much be even brought down to just 2 words because of just how the writing system works. And that's really what it felt like the translators were struggling with, is that maybe with some of these lines, the characters were probably only saying 1 or 2 words, but then they translated out to like a full sentence that they had to try to get synced up. And really, it felt like they couldn't quite get the translation and the lip syncing quite right in a few places. I mean, the voice actors did a good job, save for the ones for the children, but thankfully that's only at the beginning when the main character himself is a child. But as a whole, kinda eh. I mean, good voices, especially when you've got people like Martin Short, Werner Herzog doing the voices, but it's just kind of a case of good, oh, it's tolerable, but probably could have been better, but they probably had a hard time really trying to translate it because of just how short some of the dialogue scenes really were. That's pretty much what I could figure out as I was watching, is that they maybe just had some translation troubles with this particular film. Or at the very least, that whoever wrote the script for it was probably trying to be a little too literal in a few places. That's probably what happened in terms of the dub, at least that's my guess. Overall, this film was interesting. Best way to say is don't go in expecting the usual light-hearted Ghibli fare. This is not like Kiki's Delivery Service, and it's not even quite in the realm of like high fantasy like you would see in Nausicaa or Princess Mononoke. It's something kind of different. And while it is well produced, it's not without its problems, but some of the problems is hard to tell whether it's something from the actual film itself, or if it was specifically something that was done to it by Disney when they were translating it. It's kind of hard to tell with a few certain pieces, but especially the editing and the camera moves, so really, I don't know how to make that call, but with this particular release of The Wind Rises, there are a few problems. I mean, when you really look at it, this film's probably only really going to appeal to the animation aficionados, the people who are already fans of Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki, because for the mainstream moviegoer, there just isn't really much here for just the huge slice of the pie. This is really for the cinephiles, the connoisseurs, people who really appreciate the look and quality of 2D animation, and just appreciate the work of Hayao Miyazaki. That's really what this film is for, and that's pretty much the beginning and ending of the demographic appeal for it. I still liked it. It's a well-produced animated film, and it definitely is kind of refreshing to see the studio kind of take on some more serious material than what we usually see. I mean, the most serious I've ever seen Ghibli really get was with, well, Princess Mononoke. And again, I haven't seen a lot of Ghibli's films. I can actually count on one hand the amount I've seen, but it definitely felt good to actually see the medium of animation being used to tell kind of a more serious story. This isn't like Grave of the Fireflies sort of serious, because it still kind of has that feel-good atmosphere and feel-good warm fuzziness that Ghibli is known for, but I definitely have to applaud both the studio and Hayao Miyazaki for actually exploring something that was actually real. And so, really, it's a well-produced film, and it's definitely an interesting way for a director to leave his mark on the industry before fully bowing out of it. Unless he decides to come out of retirement again, who knows. That said, I give The Wind Rises a 4 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. As for next week, I'll be taking a look at 300 Rise of an Empire. See ya then.